I am calling to order this special meeting of the Douglas County School District Board of Education on November 17th at 12:02. We'll begin with roll call. Director Chancho Shore.
Here.
Graziano.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Holtzman is on her way, should be arriving any minute now. Lung.
Here.
Meek.
Here.
Meek is remote, and Ray is here. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Board Directors, next on our agenda is to accept the agenda. Is there a motion?
So move. Second.
Moved by Graziano, seconded by Lung. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano.
Aye.
Hanson.
Aye.
Lung.
Aye.
Meek.
Aye.
Ray, aye. All right, so our special meeting today was called due to staff's request for us to consider the assignment and authorization of acquisition of real property, commonly referred to as the Wildlife Experience in CU South. This is actually a continuation of our meeting from November 9th, when staff presented us some alternatives and some options that have become available for us to consider with our innovation campus concept as well as our alternative school. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Wise to give us that follow-up. And good afternoon. I almost said good evening. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for creating this meeting. As we look at this process, really to continue the work to move it forward. As I start to share a little bit, the purpose of this is to go through, with our process, this is a real estate transaction. It's not about one board or another board. It's timing of seeing through an opportunity as we look at evaluating and look at what options we have, really taking a look at a win-win for Douglas County schools, for our students, and for our future. And so when we look at that, we want to break down some of the questions you presented, questions we received from committees and from community members to try to address that. Also to show the work that needs to happen between now and closing, and the next steps as we have onboarding of new board members to build them up to speed and continue this process, and take a look at the next steps that will be starting in December, January, as we look at the alternative site with ACC. So if you slide 2, please. Again, we'll go over a little bit of past what we've presented in the last meeting, but without a lot of depth. We really want to get to what are those questions, what can we answer more and show that process. We really want to show what we've gone through and what we still need to in this process for the Wildlife Experience CU South. And again, try to answer as many questions as possible to get from feedback. Anytime you have a presentation and you go through, we've been trying to reach out and call individuals, have conversations, answer questions, and see what also next steps we might need to take in answering more questions. And any of this, obviously, as you look at where each person is in our community and wonderings, our goal is to create as much information for all, but also address individuals. So I'd like to bring up with me our Chief Operating Officer, Rich Cosgrove, our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Kate Kataska, and our Executive Director of Schools who oversees our career and technical education programming and our concurrent enrollment, Mr. Danny Windsor. As a whole, next slide, please. As a whole, I just kind of want to restate. When you look at our options, and we looked at Pine Drive. Pine Drive was a space with new build that in all reality became an overcost that both were not going to happen. Even is it responsible to do one or the other is a question that I and staff had. And as you heard our recommendation, when you get over budget on timeline, on top of construction, it's our recommendation to put that on hold. It's not feasible to spend that much and go over. When you look at that projected cost, what we wanted to do, and when new opportunities present themselves that are at that cost or below, and that future have better potential and future of potential savings and cost effectiveness coming back in with rentals and other programs in a better location, I really think that's a piece that I just want to call out there, that when you look at building for building, square foot for square foot, program for program, and most importantly, opportunity for our students. This puts our students in the best position possible, both at the alternative school and also through an innovation campus. An innovation campus that when you retrofit is cheaper, and you're able to look at that space and we're saving on equipment. We're already in partnerships with higher learning. If on a Parker side, while it's a great possibility to have the same partnership with higher education, you're limited because of distance. So to have this corridor piece of already having that and looking at the potential with DU, ACC, CSU, and others, I think that's another piece I'd just like to call out of current state. So I'm gonna switch over a little bit with Mr. Windsor coming up. And when you think about that, the CU South building is 175,000 square feet. When you look at the potential of phase one where you have the same number of programs, you have your culinary arts and kitchen, you have your nursing program, and you're feeding that into that with not only CTE industry certification, but you're also feeding into that for your students being involved. I met with the CEO of Skyridge the other day, and the need for nursing and looking at how we create programming. And even, we need to paint the pathway to our high school students, that if you get your associates, if you get your first year, you start working as an employee at Skyridge, they'll start to pay for your school. Not only for, say, your certified nursing technician or assistant, but then what's next? So when you think about that need and demand, just in some of our program, I want to highlight that in this square footage where it's much larger, we have the given of 7 programming, where we couldn't have done any with the cost in Parker. And we can make that happen in the same timeline. And I think that's a big question that we're getting is why now in that timeline, which we'll get to. But I'd like to have Mr. Windsor just talk a little bit more about the comparisons to review, and then also get into a little bit more of the next steps of some of the programming.
Great, thank you, Mr. Wise. One of the things I wanted to make sure there was some absolute clarity on is I think we've talked hand in hand specifically around our CU South campus and the ACC Parker campus. The one part we want to make sure there's a firm commitment. We are not going to compromise anything in providing an alternative education facility, period. I want to make sure that's very clear in this process. It's not one or the other. We absolutely have that commitment to make sure the alternative ed campus happens, period. Our goal right now is to make sure we have the right facility for that to happen at the right cost. Knowing that we were at $6 million over just for the alternative ed campus, we'd be looking at about $21 million for a 22,000 square foot facility. That is way beyond what the market value would be for something like that as well. So just want to make sure there's clarity on that. The secondary part of looking in particular around the CU South campus is absolutely, I think there are a number of needs. And again, we explored some of those opportunities where what really gets down to the fundamental aspect that we can provide 7 different programmings at a minimum at that particular campus with the ability to go 10, even 11 if you add in a welding program and the construction program that is there. This facility from a central location absolutely is one of the things that was a huge look for, I think, in this particular facility. One of the huge priorities we've talked about as a district is about equal access and opportunity. This is at the core of the reason why this facility is a great opportunity, is it provides equal access and opportunity for complementary pathway programming. We made that commitment of $15 million to invest CTE-based programming in our schools, and we were very strategic and intentional working with leaders, working with our community partners to ensure those things can happen. In this facility, we also wanted to make sure, knowing that the programs they're looking at can be very hard to hire for and very hard to be able to develop in our high school settings the way facilities are established. So the ability to be able to have 175,000 square feet of facility for us to offer intentional programming is something that obviously is extremely exciting. The part that I want to reiterate about what Mr. Wise said in particular, which we didn't talk about at length in our last meeting, but wanted to highlight that point. Being $6 million over for our project would have compromised our programming specifically we could have offered in the Pine Drive campus. And to be quite honest with you, that would have cut those 7 programs. Do you mind clicking to the next slide, please? So when you look at the right-hand side in particular on Pine Drive, if you're $6 million over, you would either have to compromise programming or potentially the entire facility itself. And so I just want to highlight that aspect is we do have those programs listed, but when you're $6 million over, something has to give. And so I wanted to highlight that particular area. When we talk about the CU South facility, there is the ability to run those 7 programs within the bond structure that is there, which again, Ms. Kataska and Mr. Cosgrove can talk about as well. But these are definitely programs we are absolutely exploring. I do want to make sure that one of the aspects that's highlighted is it is tentative in a few of the programs just because we want to make sure as we're building these programs, they're done with our partners and are provided concurrent enrollment and pathway opportunities for our kids to be able to get the stackable credentials that are there. So again, there is this list of what this looks like in comparison, but again, I wanted to give the caveat with the asterisk that's there, is we did not get to the conversation about being $6 million over, what programming that potentially could have compromised as well.
And the last part, at the very bottom of the phase 3, when you look at phases, phase 1 is not only within that budget, but we feel like we have the capacity in which to be more cost effective and offer the same number of programs at a better opportunity. You look at the equipment we're saving in the nursing program because the space is developed. You have professors and training of our credentialed teachers. And then you look at some of the culinary arts work of equipment and kitchens that are already established, above and beyond what we can build and create within our schools. But phase 2 is one that it doesn't have to just be bond generated in the future. When you look at the industry partnership, the higher education partnership, and our ability to be more cost effective, cost savings, and you look at the evaluation of our assets, and you look at where we are within 16 sites, what ability we have to save. Phase 3 is purposeful also to see when you have that much space, you want to leave some undeveloped. That way you can work with other partnerships. Our county, our libraries, Lone Tree, other services, mental health and other services where we can look, as Mr. Windsor said, to build in that plan with others. So as you think about a phased out process, it's to be efficient, cost effective, purposeful, and meet the needs of multiple people, because that's the great thing about having this space and location, is it's not just about one thing. It's win-win-win. Win-win-win over time. And we're gonna get into a little bit of the operational side. What's it work to cost in our operational current state, on top of future, on top of then when we look at the building itself, some of the questions we have around the structural side, inspections, to be able to answer that. So, Mr. Cosgrove, Ms. Kataska. Next slide, please. One piece I'd like to go back into, why now? And in this process we've talked about, when Wildlife Experience first started to look at redesignation many, many years back, it was one that we as a school district definitely had interest in. When that was donated and given to CU took that over, and I think in that partnership, it continued to have museum features. They looked at some of the rental space, but then as they started to occupy it, they only occupied it with their nursing program. So when you look at the large amount of space with the different uses and some of those leases within it, CU had to manage. And one of the things I think when you look at it, they still want to be a part of it, and that's a great benefit to us on a lease agreement. But we have the ability as a school district to not build an innovation campus, but add in programming to establish a larger innovation campus. Why this meeting? And I'm gonna be respectful but blunt. Real estate transactions, this is one that started that we weren't the buyer. The seller and buyer determine the timeline. CU establishes their needs and timeline and process, and the Linnegers work through to take control and then choose what their long-term plan was. This process fell into a fall semester where we had a board election, and I get this timeline. What we're asking for today is the ability to continue this through. We have work to do to meet these timelines to close in December. We have built-in planning for onboarding with new board members to be built up to speed and answer those questions. We want everyone to know that this isn't about this board or that board. This is about Douglas County larger, win, win, win. And in opportunities like this, again, I'm gonna say to have this location, square footage, parking, and programming and next steps, to me is a clear fiscal, as we show our due diligence, fiscal right decision, short-term and long-term. Not only that we can do, but it's gonna create better wins and possibility for us. Ms. Klemesh, can you just share a little bit of the contract piece of what we need to do for us, please?
Sure, thank you, Superintendent Wise. There are a number of things that need to happen. Should the board approve this assumption and assignment of the purchase and sale agreement, there are a number of things that need to occur. One might ask, well, it seems to us that all you need to do is put money in the escrow account and you should be on your way to closing, especially since the due diligence has been completed. That is clearly not the case here. When you're looking at a piece of property the size that the district would ultimately be acquiring, there are a number of things that need to be put in place to assure that the district is prepared to protect and meet its responsibilities to protect the assets of the district. Clearly, as you, the Board of Education, knows, you are responsible to take actions to protect the assets of the district, and it is the administration's responsibility to protect the assets of the district. So we have already started inquiries with respect to the risk management and insurance pieces, but that will take some time to be assured that we have insurance in place at the proposed date of closing, which was something that was non-negotiable. Closing was set for December 15th. We need to have our insurance in place by then because under the terms of the PSA, all of the insurance that's in place, as I understand it, the PSA provides that CU's insurance expires as of that date. So we need insurance to be actively in place as of that date. Additionally, if for whatever reason, and I know that Rich and his team or Mr. Cosgrove and his team have been extremely diligent in completing all of the due diligence related to this property, but the closing of the investigation period ends on December the 8th at noon. And so we have until that time, should there be any loose ends that someone reports or that we become aware of, we have that additional period of time to investigate. So our investigatory period and due diligence periods ends on December the 8th. After that time, or excuse me, if you proceed to authorize the district to proceed with assuming this deal for the purchase of the CU South property, we also have to think about how are we going to get the services in place to, again, protect the assets of the district. So we need to think about assumption of contracts, if that's a possibility. We need to think about assignment of responsibilities for security and operations and maintenance. So that is prepared to go by December 15th. And that is, even under this particular timeline that we're working under now, we are going to be working with extreme diligence to get these tasks done. And not only to add to these, what I've previously described as diligence and activities, the terms of the purchase and sale agreement require that we enter into and negotiate a nursing occupancy agreement with the University of Colorado to identify and to come to an agreement with respect to the lease terms that the district would enter into with the University of Colorado with respect to the requisite space needed by CU's nursing program. So we'd need to negotiate the nursing occupancy agreement. In addition to that, you've already heard about the wonderful things that the district is planning in terms of providing services to its students. By December 7th, not only does the nursing occupancy agreement need to be negotiated and finalized, we also must negotiate and finalize a nursing educational agreement. We have materials and Danny can best describe these, but materials that are available at CU South that will be of benefit to our students to use in, for example, a CNA program that we might provide. So we need to negotiate and come to terms with respect to how CU can support the district in the delivery of its programs to its students relating to nursing educational programs and related programming. And that will also take some time, and that will begin and must be completed by December 7th, because if those two agreements are unacceptable to CU under the terms of the agreement, then the agreement would not continue to closing. So it's very important for us to have a sufficient period of time within, after today's date and prior to December 7th to finish those two agreements. And it looks like Mr. Windsor is wanting to supplement my comments in that regard.
No, and I appreciate it. Thank you, Ms. Klemesh. The part I wanted to reiterate is those nursing conversations around materials, equipment, educational opportunities are already have been in progress with CU at length as far as with their associate deans, their dean, their finance as well, and legal team. Just knowing that we've been in active conversation on that and feel like we're in a very good place to finalize those details as well.
Right, but it's not something can just happen overnight, particularly when we're looking at a few days of break next week for Thanksgiving. And then finally, sometime prior to, and again, this doesn't take time, but we are obligated to provide a letter in writing of a notice to proceed. If we are interested in moving to closing, we issue a notice to proceed, and that has to occur before December 7th. So it also looks like Mr. Cosgrove has one more comment to add.
Directors, I also want to add that operations and maintenance and security have been and continue to be in very aggressive conversations with the University of Colorado, with their vendors to make sure from security, fire alarm, snow removal, building automation system monitoring, and oversight, as well as cleaning. All of those contracts will be in place the day after, pending board approval in this process if we close on that property. I also want to add these timelines, while contractually driven and driven by opportunity, it's also a perfect situation because it allowed us to pivot 180 degrees, again, pending Board of Education approval, with an architect, construction manager, general contractor to proceed immediately and to maintain the same timelines that we had for Pine Drive for the Innovation Center, in this case, in the Alt Ed School in the ACC case.
So last things before we continue to the next slide with Mr. Cosgrove, Ms. Kataska, and Mr. Windsor. Part of this is my ability to have us continue the work sign off. We will be onboarding and bringing all of our new board up to speed and continue to review. We'll continue to show the due diligence that we feel like as we will show today, we are in great standing as far as the structural side inspection side of a building, on top of the operational side, short-term, long-term. And we also want to build that information and follow through as we transition with boards. That is our reality in this timeline. But as we said, we didn't determine this timeline, but we're trying to make sure we work with everyone and are responsive to answering questions, work through our committees, community, and also transition of board. And we'll continue to do that. So as we get going, next slide. As we said, Mr. Windsor said, part of this process that I want to make sure we're clear from last meeting's public comments and questions, the alternative education school is still a top priority. It is a priority that fits within both of these locations, and we feel good in moving forward that we have the ability to still hit that 23 timeline. We are going to be venturing into more work as we explore and move forward with ACC in December and January. So as this transitions, we will be back doing this exact same thing with another building and another entity. But we're very optimistic of next steps, and we look at the cost effectiveness also and reasonable that it makes a lot of sense and is a great opportunity for less money and future savings and facility-wise in a better location because it's built, it's ready. So I think on that side, I just want you to know that will be our next steps starting December, January of contracts, everything else. So when we look at time frame of our role as a district, but also working with our board and ACC with their board, their state institution, that's part of that process and understanding. But it is right there as our top priority that it will happen. It's not set aside or won't go. We do have other plans, but this is by far, as we evaluate, the best option, and we see it being a very realistic and optimistic. Mr. Windsor, anything else you want to say?
No, that being said, well, thank you.
Let's see, next slide.
One of the parts just want to continue on, I think, with what Mr. Wise said as well is, one, we want to honor the process that ACC also has to go through. And so part of the reason why, from a timing standpoint, just to reiterate, is if it was solely our decision, we absolutely could try to make sure that it shows that demonstrated priority in advance, but also knowing with ACC's board and as well as their process, and also being a part of the the community college system that is there. There is an appraisal process and a variety of things we'd have to go through, as well as MOUs are already attached with that campus from ACC, MSU, a variety of different areas, and so we're still exploring that piece. One part I just wanted to be able to reiterate, kind of talking about, and I appreciate the question last time from Director Holtzman in particular around PK-12 programming, knowing that we want our dollars to specifically be invested in our students. This program, and we talk about CU South in particular, is for our PK-12 students, period. It does give our students an opportunity, once they leave Douglas County School District, to be equipped with the necessary skills to enter in the workforce, as well as give them an advantage. For those students that want to continue on to a college-level education, it's significantly different when a student has a 3.4 GPA on a thing and a 1100, and you could do the same thing as saying I have these 3 industry credentials as well as 30 to 60 college credits that could transfer in. That gives our students an advantage, not only to enter college, but that ability to persist and get through in that 4-year period that we'd like to. So as we look at this is an investment in our students. I'm not sure I should say this publicly, and I hope I don't get in trouble, but I'm going to say it very candidly as well. Our kids don't come to school solely for math class. They may, but I also will say that what kids do come to school for are a variety of passions. And a lot of these passions can't just be in one-off shots. They have to be in intentional pathways and opportunities for students to explore, but also gain the necessary skills for them to be successful and beyond. I'll say our high school principals, and I know Mr. Abner can speak to this as well too, have done an amazing job creating pathway opportunities for students. We also know that we can't set our high school leaders up to be able to try to find these unicorn teachers to be able to try to offer these programs and opportunities that are there, where if we can navigate that ourselves and have all 9 high schools access that, that gives our students an advantage no matter what region they're in particular. But this investment is in our students in the K-12 system in particular. I think our goal is to make sure that we give them a greater opportunity to be successful when they leave our district and beyond. And I think that's something we need to continue to look at in our matriculation and persistency data.
Thank you. Next slide. So some of the questions, comments, we want to make sure we do our best to address. So I think on some of these, we're going to go back to the operational side and where our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Kate Kataska, and our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Rich Cosgrove, can share a little bit more.
Directors, I want to highlight what Danny Windsor said. This is about students, and also we have the opportunity to consolidate support services as well as educational program functions. So the focus of CU South is to make sure, along with the opportunity for Arapahoe Community College in Parker, to make sure we provide everything that the voters approved that we had planned on Pine Drive. And these 2 facilities, this being the first, without a doubt, provide that opportunity, as well as future phasing. Phase 1, as well as the purchase and tenant finish for Arapahoe Community College can be funded by the funds from the Pine Drive site without any additional bond funds. There's a phase 2, which has opportunities for additional programming in CU, as well as 20,000 square feet more in CU South for a phase 3 to be determined. So flexibility is key here. We fall under educational occupancy E for students. Staff, depending on the building and the layout and the amount of students, can function under a lesser code. And we're continuing to explore that. That's the code that currently provides for CU South. And so there's additional opportunities at that point.
To go along with that, when you look at our lease agreements and some of our rental commitments, as we said, we have approximately 16 sites where people are spread out. As you take a look at what our lease agreements and rentals, facilities to have meetings, et cetera, you're in the $600,000 to $900,000 cost. As we look to centralize, this isn't about central administration, but when you have this space and you have student programming, and you also have the ability to say, what are our efficiencies? You go back and evaluate what are our costs going out and what are our assets. Within each asset, you have maintenance. The operational cost to keep some of these buildings, so many of them, has cost. If we were to look at to sell one of those, not only do you gain that cost relief back, you also then have the purchase and the money there to redistribute to capital needs. So that could be capital needs of tier, that could be capital needs of phase 2 or phase 3 in that process. But we also talked about that lease agreement coming into CU South to not only offset, to project out, and to add money towards. So I think in each of those, within those partnerships, again, reiterates, hopefully in understandable terms, but the common sense approach of this is not only affordable right now, it's affordable long-term, and has a strong, not just possibility, but the strong expectation we'll be able to be more efficient, save money, and generate ability to fund this on our own. So, Rich, anything else?
Directors, I simply want to reiterate, so to construct a facility of this size with the current building costs, with the current educational e-occupancy requirements, and those are brick, block, durable surfaces, fire sprinklers, backflow prevention, significant amount of toilet fixtures, HVAC flow. These are above commercial standards. $450 a square foot. That's what we're tracking now, as well as reflected in the master capital plan. That's $79 million to build this building. Plus, it's on 14 acres. $500,000 to $1 million an acre in its current location. Worst case, $500,000. That's an additional $7 million. $86 million versus $29 million here. Granted, this is a facility, very much like our schools. There will be future capital needs, but not unlike our schools, exactly the same. I'll talk about the due diligence on the next slide. So we have completed our due diligence. We started on September 8th. We spent 9 weeks. We had an architect. We had 9 consultants from 5 engineering firms: civil, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural, traffic. And this slide really highlights some of the questions that we've received. But before I get to these points, I want to note that zoning is good. All regulations with respect to traffic, site circulation, capacity of parking, the building envelope, the building structure. In the kitchen alone, we have at least $500,000 worth of equipment which is operational. I will say, in the last bond, when we were opening elementary schools, we were spending $200,000 per elementary school just for kitchen equipment. So there's significant opportunity here. The due diligence has no concerns. We've literally looked at every crack, every building component. We have photos and a detailed analysis of every mechanical equipment: air handling unit, motor, chiller, boiler, cooling tower, et cetera. Just to address some of the potential questions, the building is completely ADA compliant. The ADA parking spaces are the closest to the building, and that's the requirement of ADA. There's an accessible path to the building. Over time, we could continue to monitor the flagstone, the settlement. Right now, there are no settlements that we're aware of that's over ½ an inch. If so, we would repair that, or in phase 1 or future phases, improve the ADA with a concrete winding path from the parking to the building. We're even looking at Linus Way and repurposing that to bring those ADA parking spaces closer to the building. Some of our high schools have over 250 feet from the ADA to the front door, so this is not uncommon. Structural, there are 2 minor cracks in the crawl space concrete grade beam that have been monitored since 2016. One has moved slightly. One is 1/16 of an inch, and one is 1/32 of an inch wide. They are not moving. If they do move, you put epoxy grout to join the 2 members, and if you need, you put micro-helical piers to stop the settlement. It is not moving. That would be the fix for less than $50,000. This is not uncommon. We have done this in one of our other schools. It's very non-intrusive, very easy to do. Mechanical, the 2 chillers, the boilers, except for the steam boilers for humidity art, the cooling tower, they're all being used, they don't leak, and they're fully operational. We have in our phase 1 cost $35,000 to do some very major maintenance, not replacement of components, but maintenance to make sure those lives are extended. Steam boilers would not be used for humidity because those were put in place for the art, and the art will all be removed, including the taxidermy and statues. The sewage lift station, it is next to an air handling unit intake. We're aware there's a charcoal blanket over it now to prevent smell. We wouldn't be satisfied that. We would put an additional pump, to put it in layman's terms. It's a pump, it's a diffuser to create negative pressure in the sewage lift station to take that odor up through the existing waste lines. $10,000 at the most. Elevators, they're both fully operational. I have personally looked in every pit and every cab, along with our elevator contractor. A pit and sump pump were installed. I think some of the questions were related to a dated document. All of those issues have been corrected. They're inspected annually, just like all of our 55 elevators. That inspection was in October 2021. All the items are minor, except one, which is a roof hatch in the personnel elevator, literally so first responders can stick a long ladder up through the roof hatch. That roof hatch needs to be modified, at the most $50,000. Again, all these costs are included in our phase 1 estimate. Roof, it's just like our school roofs. Sometimes it leaks. All the leaks have been repaired. Additional repairs are included in phase 1. We even have in phase 1 a total roof replacement for $1.85 million as a bid alternate. If we can afford it, we want to replace the roof. If not, it'll be a future phase, but it's not going to leak because we're going to be addressing repairs in phase 1. The parking lot, it's very similar to that of our schools. And in fact, the parking lot is in better condition than some of the parking lots at our schools. So it's a good point that we're talking about parking lots. That's a good discussion to have. Curb and gutter, they do need repair, mill and overlay over time. There was a question about the pump in the pond that was just replaced and in fact upgraded and is fully operational. So the due diligence process was used not only to confirm it's a very sustainable opportunity, but we used it to base our space fit and our cost estimates for phase 1 to make sure not only do we fit the programming needed, we tenant finish, we upgrade the codes as needed for educational occupancy E, and we've included all of the urgent repairs in the phase 1, which are included within the budgets which were funded by which were the identified funding for Pine Drive. I hope that answers your questions.
So, Mr. Cosgrove, we've had questions of concern over large structural, or when you get inspections, when you have engineers, when you have architects and experts coming in to identify this. Do you have red flags, or do you feel with your due diligence and the expectation of doing an extreme due diligence on this, are you confident in the structural piece now and in the future? And feel like the maintenance, that is something that we can not only now, but also in the future, have finance and ability to continue the work within CU South?
Yes, thank you, Superintendent Wise. We have absolutely no doubt. We have a licensed structural engineer that reviewed and certified. In the state of Colorado with the bentonite soil, typically soils take about 7 years to settle. Our schools go through the same issue. They'll expand, they'll contract, just like they do on your house. There are no structural issues that would impact the building. When you look at a concrete tile floor that has cracks in it, and you look down 20 to 30 foot down the hall, there's a control joint. In our professional opinion, they left out 2 control joints. That's what control joints do. They control the crack in concrete. And so these are not major. The 2 that we are even worthy of monitoring have not moved. One's moved very, very little since 2016, and the fix is routine. This is a foundation that is on piers all the way to bedrock, to the point where the soil does not move, just like all of our schools. We either have helical piers or poured in place reinforced concrete piers. That's this foundation system. It's good. It's not moving.
Thank you. Next slide.
Directors, if I could also highlight some of the key components on this. So, as you know, the 2018 bond included an alternative education school on Pine Drive. We had opportunity with premium interest cash in lieu we were able to work within those budgeted funds to master plan and then design the site for an innovation center as well. The timing of this, to the earlier slide, is also very opportunistic because the initial guaranteed maximum prices were not submitted for that project until early October, at which point we immediately took it to the board and explained the reason for the cost overage, which were the 26% hyperinflation market due to COVID in the supply chain, the realignment of Hills Drive, the on-site, off-site traffic improvements, as well as the extensive commercial grade level landscaping. So because of that, with your approval, we paused. We spent $3 million on that site. This is a win-win also because 85% of that $3 million spent were on the building designs, which could be used at any dedicated school site in the district. Those, by the way, were also structural foundation, so we could site adapt to any soils condition, as well as we have a beautiful 20-acre site that we could continue to hold in our inventory for future development. And in fact, this past Monday, the town of Parker approved the annexation of the 2 acres in Parker, so we have 20 acres now within one jurisdiction. The 2 acres were in Douglas County. And they approved the zoning of that for public use, which it was already zoned for schools, but public use gives us more flexibility with respect to design and traffic. The tenant finish of CU South will be conducted in phases to ensure total costs are within budget. We're carrying a 15% contingency in that budget. That's significant. That's higher than normal because we know we have to stay within budget. We have 3 bid alternates. And a bid alternate is when bids come in, if you can't afford it, you don't accept the alternate. If you can, you do. So you still have a complete usable project, but you have options. Phase 2 will occur. There are many avenues for funding. That's basically finishing the space on the east side of the facility. We're very fortunate with that building. It's basically 2 buildings next to each other. We have a 2-hour rated wall, and you could provide all of the code upgrades and finishing on one side and not have to address the other side until you have funding and timing is appropriate. Phase 3, as I said earlier, there's significant space remaining in phase 3. 20,000 square feet is about 40% the size of one of our elementary schools. It's a significant amount of space. We could look at the library, Douglas County partnerships, educational programming. As Superintendent Wise said, in our master capital plan, we highlighted 16 different sites with support and programming from EDCSD, DC support, bridge, as well as critical central functions that support educational programming. And phase 3 would be funded using remaining funds from 1 or 2. For example, we could be under budget, and that's the goal. And if sufficient funds were not available, we would continue to explore additional financing options. The key here is that future district bonds are not needed to purchase or phase 1 for CU or the Arapahoe Community College Parker campus for alternative education. Thank you.
You look at some of our land assets, our building assets, and then our leases with the ability to look and evaluate what's best, look at how you can save or generate funds, and how to start your own plan, let alone look for the future. And then, as we said, as we start to have those other partnerships on the outside, also look at that way in which to consolidate cost and share it together. As we talked about, phase 1 is not only for these 7 programs of Innovation Campus and more at CU South, it's also for the alternative school setting. So when you look at that phase 1 approach of being at that cost and fiscally responsible for what we're trying to accomplish, we're able to with these moving forward. So while timeline is an interesting timeline, and it's also falling into holiday breaks with Thanksgiving and winter break, and also transition of board, you also look at the opportunity. The opportunities of both of these following through at the beginning of the year allows us to stay on a timeline to open in 23. So while at times you're looking at going, oh, this is happening kind of fast, or why is it happening now? The other positive of that is by hitting these timeframes, we're able to move our construction, what's gonna be on a new build, over to renovating and still have the potential to open up on the same timeframe. Hence, we want to see through. With CU's contract, we don't want to lose it. If we lose it, we won't have another opportunity at this. The cost, the value, and the potential, you just can't find. When we look at alternative setting, we feel like we have an extremely valuable opportunity that we want to continue to move forward with in the months ahead. Next slide. Ms. Kataska.
Thank you, directors. So we also received some questions around the ongoing operational expenses associated with the building. What 1.4 represents is the gross estimated operational expenses for above and beyond what was already planned for the sites at Pine Drive. So that would assume that we receive no offsetting rental income, lease income. What we know, though, is that won't simply be the case. We already are working on the lease agreements with CU South for the nursing space. That will generate lease income to the building. We also have an incredible opportunity in terms of the rentals that we could offer of the building. Not only for DCSD events like our Apple Awards or galas, proms, homecomings, but also to outside events, whether that's the Great Hall or the auditorium. We as a district spend approximately $1 million on leases annually. Those are both leases for programming out at Inverness and some of the ones that have been approved recently, and also for us to rent buildings like we would rent to other people. So to rent the Pace Center for a large district meeting or an event of that nature. So as we really think about what that 1.4 represents, I am absolutely confident that we would be able to offset those operational costs with the opportunity to generate revenue to offset our expenses.
So I think that last statement, the question we had coming back to us, cost right now and cost for the future. Ms. Kataska, do you feel confident that as you work the budget now in the future, that this building in itself can be self-sufficient, sustained, let alone the ability to add in partners and create funds?
I do. Another important thing to note is, I believe Ms. Klemesh spoke about, is we are currently working to negotiate contracts with the current vendors that service the building. Those look to be very favorable rates, and we should be able to assume those contracts. The other opportunity that we have is to be able to scale up our operational support as time goes on. We don't have to have the building fully operational on day one, so we can build out our expenses as we are able to build out the space and then subsequently generate those offsetting incomes.
You know, the last thing I want to say is this is not about central administration space. This is about providing an innovation campus in an existing building that for the cost can provide the same number of programs. They'll be able to add on 3 or more programs in the future, add on future partnerships with the county or other industries. On top of it, not only those lease agreements with higher education, but our students get to partake in those. So it's not just those entities using our space, it's the benefit of our students and our teachers. And you look at consolidation of some central administration supports. It makes sense in a higher education institution to look at your curriculum instruction assessment group, to provide PD for our teachers, to partner with higher education to provide certification, master's programs. With our new compensation system, we want to identify the ability to reward with masters. That's going to help you become a better teacher. And certain times it gives you certification. It gives you the ability to teach concurrent enrollment. And so you look at all levels, it's win-win. So when you look at overlap of building a stronger compensation system to value our teachers and provide the resource and PDE, this too does that. So when you say central administration, it's not just to have a great spot. It's to be very strategic. We're asked a question, and even as a board asked in the last time, normally you look to find a building and to build it. In the past, we've been kind of operating as far as we can, fast as we can. Limited resources, we're spread out. This gives us a very intentional strategic plan to evaluate, to make better decisions that are also more cost effective, more efficient, and better for our students, staff, and our system, and therefore our community. It's financially responsible. So at that point, next slide, questions from you.
Very good. Thank you, Superintendent Wise, Ms. Kataska, Mr. Windsor, Mr. Cosgrove. for responding to a lot of the questions we've heard, not only amongst us, but also within our community too. I appreciate the in-depth analysis that you've done. Directors, we will have opportunity to have more discussion about the proposed agenda item, but for right now, are there specific questions regarding the overview that our staff provided? Any questions? I just want to capture one thing that you stated as a question, is that if we do not act, the consequences I heard, Superintendent Wise, really are twofold. One is that the seller could decide to withdraw from this transaction. And two is that we would further delay our timeline of starting programming for kids. Is that the two major consequences if we do not make decisions now?
Yeah, I'm going to do my best to answer this a little more technically and also defer to Mrs. Klemesh a little bit. We have work we still have to do. We have deadlines we have to hit in this process. With the transition, we need to build in our board, current members of our board and future members of our board. But we as a staff need to complete things leading into these meetings, hence signing off on things. So the ability for myself and staff to finish our due diligence, look in the agreements, we need to be able to continue this and sign off and move it forward. We also want to build up to speed and have the same support that we hope to get with our next board moving into December, because this will close and move forward with our board. But I will say this is a win-win for Douglas County Schools.
Right.
This isn't about that side, but I think on that side, we have to have that process to see it through. But the question that came back to us is, why with this board or the other? It's about both, but we have to hit these deadlines, and that's what it allows us to do.
So I want to clarify though, my question. I understand that there's a lot of tasks to be accomplished in order for us to meet the proposed closing date. All of you have presented that very well. My question though is different, and it's not about this board or the other board. It's about what is the consequence if we decide to delay this decision today. I understand that it would not give our staff enough time to be able to get everything in place for the closing date. I understand that, but what would be, and I outlined two that I thought I heard. One is the seller could go away and just say, I'm not going to continue to engage in this offer or this transaction, and it would delay our student programming. So that's what I want to hear is specifically, if this board says, you know what, we're going to delay this, we want to have more opportunities for community to weigh in. We don't want to close on December 15th. We don't think that's reasonable because we have other things we think that needs to be done. So I guess that's my question is, what's the consequence if we do that?
So you outlined two very specific consequences which are accurate. One, if we don't meet the contractual obligation, it won't go through. Two, if at any point we delay too much and things aren't happening, the seller and buyer could relinquish this contract, and it will not happen. So the ability and opportunity of a timeline is definitely there.
Okay.
The other thing within this timeline, the bittersweet, if you will, by closing in December, it does keep us on the ability to offer student programming. If we don't, and it was even delayed and agreed upon, our ability to deliver in our time frame that we want to in 2023 could go away because of the construction crews and process. So yes, I would say, to answer that, hopefully it gives you a bit of a better answer. Mrs. Klemesh or Mr. Abner, if there's anything else you want to add on your side, I hope that answers it specifically that yes.
Very good. Yeah, I think that answered my question, unless there's other things staff wanted to add. Director Lung, question?
Again, thank you very much for all those informations. And I think in a lot of people's mind is, how is DCSD involvement in the contract between CU and Mr. Denningers? So CU is selling the property to Mr. and Mrs. Denningers. Is DCSD a party in these transactions? And how would DCSD's decisions
cause these transactions to fail or not be able to commit it? Is it contractually, legally, DCSD is named in this transaction between those two parties? I think that there's a big confusion about that in here. And also, the reality, I mean, we operate no matter which board is in. I mean, I agree with that. But the reality is that you have a new majority that's going to sworn in November 29. And have we reached out to both parties and said that, is it possible to delay the closing on December 15, to move it maybe a week or two later, so that all 7 members of the future board in December will support these transactions? Because it's very important that you get buy-in from all the board members that will work with you in the future. Thank you.
2 great questions. I'm going to start with the last one. Very much so with this transition, we are looking at using the onboarding with our new board members to build up to speed on both CU and ACC and have questions specifically. The idea that our next formal board meeting, the 29th is first seating, the 14th is first board meeting. I would love to see the opportunity of another board meeting for this review to go back over. So on top of onboarding and the potential of creating that, yes, we started those conversations. Yes, I think as we have new board members and seating and positions happen, there's that very good possibility that we build in that purpose and that meeting structure to do just that. Now, I do have concern about postponing, because you're right. We'll talk about the contractual agreements and timing, and see you very much wanting this to close at the end of before the end of the fiscal year. But I'll let Ms. Klemesh talk more about the real estate contracts and what that means in our process in that. But I do feel, just like we have with all of our committees in trying to do this, that we can still do within the time frame established a quality job, because this is, we've done our due diligence, we've done our cost analysis now and for the future, and really feel this is a phenomenal win-win opportunity now and for the future. So on that side, I think we can do it within our timeframes, build in new members of the board and next steps, and also continue that work within our timeframe. But I do have concern that if we were to be moved, the ability to stay in this contract and lose this opportunity. But I'll let Ms. Klemesh talk more to that.
Yeah, I first want to respond to who the parties were to the underlying purchase and sale agreement. The district did not sign as a signatory to the purchase and sale agreement. That agreement was between the Linigers and CU, the University of Colorado Board of Regents. The reason for the board action today is the action to assume the responsibilities of the purchaser under the purchase and sale agreement. So that's what the assignment and assumption is that the district would assume responsibility for the purchaser, the Linigers, with respect to that PSA agreement. With respect to the timing, again, I think Mr. Weiss has expressed to you very succinctly that December 15th is really, as I understand it, as far back, my understanding is that the University of Colorado wants to close this before the end of this current calendar year. And if we move it any time beyond December 15th, we're really getting into a period of time when representative personnel at the university, because of the holiday and winter break, operations and timing of the ability to close, even if we look at 1 week past, we're very close to the end of the year, and then making it more difficult to bring the matter to closure.
Very good. All right. Director Meek, I want to make sure I note if you have a question.
No, I'm good at this point in time.
Okay. Directors, any other questions regarding the overview? All right, very good. Well, again, thank you for the presentation. I also want to just acknowledge that as quick as this has been for us to respond to the seller, it's been incredible for you as staff members to have to also negotiate this. I mean, it was not certainly something that was on your plate in addition to all the other things you're dealing with. So I just want to be grateful that all of you have taken the time to do the due diligence, to respond accordingly, and to provide us with all this in-depth information, because we know that's burning the candle on both ends. So thanks to our wonderful staff again.
Yeah. And to the staff, our legal team working through that, our finance team, and our operations team to go to the detail and to look at all the concerns with even a more diligent eye to forecast out and look at that side. It truly goes to everyone around here. So I appreciate you saying that.
You bet. All right, well, we'll let you guys relax for a little bit, for a few minutes. We're going to move on then to public comment specific for this agenda item. This is typical of a special meeting that we actually invite public comment for this agenda item only. Those who are wanting to make public comment for this agenda item were requested to complete an online form by 10 o'clock today. And in order to maximize accessibility for all public commenters, the choice of presenting in person or remotely was provided. The board would like for all discourse that occurs in this room to occur in an atmosphere of mutual respect. Everyone in this room plays an important part in modeling appropriate behavior and promoting an environment that is fair, safe, and dignified. Those who signed up to speak today acknowledged and accepted the safety and security protocols as outlined by our security department to ensure that our meetings can be conducted efficiently and without disruption. To maintain this decorum of mutual respect, speakers are asked to refrain from using individual names in an offensive manner, as well as using derogatory statements and name calling, as this only distracts from the issue of concern. The expectation is that everyone who wants to speak is treated with respect, regardless of the perspective they are sharing. We want the boardroom to be a place where civility and decency prevails and where freedom of expression is free of condemnation, harsh judgment, and fear. In order to promote this atmosphere where all commenters can speak without intimidation and disruption, I would ask that no reaction be made after a comment is given. This includes applause, verbal comments, aggressive nonverbal behavior, or judgmental tones. I'm asking the audience to help us allow and respect all perspectives by remaining silent during and after each public comment is made. Please also keep in mind that there may be a need to interrupt you if a board director calls for a point of order. If this occurs, all comments should stop until directed to continue. Each speaker, we have, I believe, 10 today, is allotted up to 3 minutes to address the board. You will hear a tone signaling the end of this time. Out of respect to other commenters, please complete your comments within this 3-minute time. If you have handouts that you would like to have distributed to the board, please provide them to our Assistant Secretary, Kelly Duvall, at the end of the dais. Please also know that this is our time to just listen without engaging in discussion. However, your comments will certainly be considered as we consider this particular agenda today. It's also important for the listening public to understand that public comments are not fact-checked, nor should the board's silence indicate agreement nor disagreement with what is being said. So with that, we will move on to public comment. I will announce the first three, and so they're ready to come forward. Jason Cassay, Michael Peterson, and Liz Wagner. Jason Cassay, are you here in the audience? I think he had to leave. Thank you. He was here, but stepped out. Okay, thank you. Michael Peterson, you're on. Liz Wagner, and then Allison Kolinsky.
And due to the unique nature of my comments, if I could have a little grace on the time, because I'd like to get through them. So comments today, I'm going to limit to the CU South purchase and not really talk about ACC Parker. We know this process started back in February, March with the LOI, and I think there was good community notification and involvement at that time. But it was really only at the last board meeting a week ago that the public was re-engaged. In July, a lot of the meetings started to move basically into an opaque status. We had the Linnegers involved, we had CU, we had DU, we had the board. And I think although there was a confidentiality agreement, I think we could have done a better job at communicating some of the intent without going into specifics and getting the taxpayers and the public a better idea of the intentionality of what is supposed to happen with this campus. I don't doubt any of the incredible benefits that were mentioned last meeting and this meeting. I think there's incredible potential, especially in CTE and CE. There's a absolute great potential for synergy with the community, what I would call Team Dougco in phase 2 and phase 3, and we go forward. But I think the biggest issue we need to deal with is the lack of transparency in the process up until this point at this last hour. We have some external schedules and timelines and legal requirements we know that are now driving this ship. And as Superintendent Wise mentioned, it's not great when an opportunity aligns itself on top of a board switch out in election year and some pretty tight timelines. But with all that said, we really need to do a better job at managing the perception of what's going on here in the district. So that starts with transparency. We just heard today from Mr. Cosgrove about the great due diligence that was done, but a lot of that concern wasn't brought up until now. Things around roofs, elevators, foundations, and why they don't seem disqualifying. We do need to bring up the bad with the good and let the public hear that as early as possible. When the shifting of the bond funds as well away from Pine Drive, that's something that requires robust engagement with the taxpayers. Even though I believe we're meeting the intent of those bond funds in a different way, we really do owe it to those folks to have more of a voice, not very late in the process, and it needs to be robust engagement to really get their validation on what this board and the district wants to do to go forward. So I have one caution and one recommendation going forward. The caution is that we have two major issues that are hanging the balance with how this is disposed of in the next coming weeks into the next month. And the first one is closing that teacher and staff compensation gap. If we are going to run a bond next year, we have to have trust to do that. And a lot of that trust is going to be dictated by how the current board and the new board handles this issue to build trust and get the transparency. So that's the first thing we have to be very particular to. The second thing is the buildings, new construction that needs to happen next year, as recommended by the LRPC and in the MCP. That also hangs in the balance through our ability to push and pass a bond next year. The last recommendation would be for the superintendent to not issue a notice to proceed until the new board is seated, if I may, for about 20 seconds.
Actually,
Thank you.
Mr. Peterson, I want to be fair to all our speakers. So if we could follow those guidelines, I would appreciate that. But thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next is Allison Kalinsky, and then Scott Jacobson, and then we'll move to online with Bradford Geiger.
Jason's back if you want to do him, and then don't forget Liz.
It's okay, you can go first.
Whatever.
I apologize. So Liz Wagner is next. Allison Kalinsky is after Liz, and then Scott Jacobson. And I'm sorry, Jason Cassay, is he back in the room? Okay. Okay.
I might not speak, but yeah.
All right, directors, good afternoon. Your legacy rests in your hands today. Will your legacy be one of being economical with the truth, but not with the bond dollars? Will you justify a yes vote today that the sneaky manner in which this property was obtained is acceptable because the ends justify the means? In April of 21, Superintendent Wise came before you and asked that the board enter into an LOI. Director Graziano said, and I quote, "There's no risk." And he's right, there wasn't a risk. Today, Superintendent Wise has come before you asking for not asking for a no-risk LOI, but instead that you enter into a binding purchase reassignment agreement for the same property. Unlike in the spring when a transparent process was laid out with a commitment to engage with the community on this purchase, this was all done in secrecy. Why the different approaches regarding transparency from spring to fall? What role did the Board of Education election play in this being kept under wraps until after the election? Due diligence began on 9/6. At the 10/26 Board of Education meeting, there was no mention of consideration of this purchase when staff came to you to vote not to move forward on Pine Drive due to a $6 million cost overrun for construction. This after spending $3 million in bond funds. You made a public decision and omitted material facts to that decision. There is clearly a difference of opinion between DCSD's perception of the damage of the building, in the building, and that of another government entity and two nonprofits. What happens if DCSD is wrong? What is the contingency amount if repairs exceed the 15%? Where do those funds come from? Superintendent Wise stated that the lessons learned from the wildlife experience in CU not being able to make this building cost effective was because it was not filled. How many years will it be before it is 100% filled? What percentage of the 175,000 square feet will be occupied by DCSD administration, by DCSD students? What percentage of the unoccupied after phase 1 is complete? What about after phase 2? What percentage of the square feet will not be utilized on a daily basis, but rather an occasional basis, like the IMAX Theater and the Great Hall? What is the plan to pay for phase 2 and 3? Are those dollars that should be allocated elsewhere? The MCP states that 10 high schools have received $10 million in bond funds for CTE based on a system regional approach. So which is it? Is it a systemic regional approach or is it a centralized approach? Now let's talk about the district's mission and vision. Do you know what the greatest predictor of a student being able to maximize their individual potential post-graduation is? Spoiler alert, it's not having a CTE program. Centralized CTE program. It's being able to read. An alarmingly high percentage of students in DCSD are not reading at grade level in K through 12. You should move forward with the alternative high school at the ACC building and reallocate the remaining bond money for more urgent needs in buildings that are already filled. And I will close with this. Just because it's on sale doesn't mean it's a good purchase. This isn't a good purchase. Please leave DCSD with a legacy of making fiscally responsible decisions.
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. Allison Kalinsky is next, and then Scott Jacobson.
At least I didn't have to walk all the way from the back of the room this time. All right. On October 6th, the district entered into an access and confidentiality agreement with the Linigers and CU in direct violation of your previous promise to this community to be completely transparent about the purchase throughout the entire process. A confidentiality agreement which in part reads, seller, purchaser, and DCSD further understand that the remainder of the access agreement, including without limitation provisions related to access, insurance, and risk allocation, set forth in sections 1 through 6, will continue in full force and effect upon the execution and until closing. For laymen, that means that none of the very real questions I'm about to ask can really be answered until after the closing of this deal. Superintendent Wise just said in his PowerPoint that community was involved in this decision. Your confidentiality agreement proves you are lying. What are you so afraid of us seeing? Our community deserves to know. Number 1, you said the art and taxidermy will be removed. Great. At whose expense? 20,000 square feet will be unfinished until the additional bond is passed. At the October 26th board meeting, you said that only Tier 1 renovations would be allocated under the $25 million budget, and an additional bond would need to be passed in order to finish this building. Superintendent Wise was clear at the same meeting that in order to be financially viable, the space had to be, quote, filled. What is the board's plan to maintain financial viability without the additional bond being passed when our own estimates say it must be filled? What is the estimated percentage of the building that will be used by adult programming on a daily basis? What's the estimated percentage of the building that will be used by centralized admin? Who chooses programming at this new building, CU or DCSD? What is the estimated percentage of the building that will be used by DCSD students on a daily basis? What's the percentage of the building that will remain vacant on a daily basis? We still have the IMAX Theater and the Great Hall. Who owns the nursing equipment still in place in the section you're renting to CU? Who is responsible for the upkeep of that equipment and space? Will any of the $25 million be used to landlord finish that space for CU? Will DU be offered the same sweetheart deal of $2.50 a square foot base rent in an area where base commercial rent tops $28 a square foot? Will DCSD students be expected to pay for the specialized programming and certification being offered through CU? Will the incoming board have the opportunity to review and affirm the decisions being rushed through? Thankfully, today, you've made it clear that they will. But why has this board been so adverse to public information and transparency on this purchase? This absolutely may well be the best decision for the district. The problem is we don't know. You've made absolutely certain that we couldn't know by signing the confidentiality agreement. You lied to us about community involvement through the process.
Thank you, Ms. Kalinsky.
What else are you lying about?
Next is Scott Jacobson, and then Jason Kasay.
With respect, I'd like to yield my time to Mike Peterson.
Okay, and you're Scott Jacobson, I
Yes,
assume?
sir. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. Peterson, you have 3 minutes on behalf of Scott Jacobson.
And I apologize to Scott by not reading faster previously. So picking up with the cautions, we do have teacher comp via MLO, and we do have new construction with a bond hanging in balance if we don't get trust on this issue. My one recommendation I was going to mention was to Superintendent Wise to hold your notice to proceed as required, as noted earlier, by noon on December 8th, until the newly seated board can get in and review the due diligence that was done here. As Ronald Reagan wisely said at one time, trust but verify. So we have asked the superintendent, that's myself and the other three newly elected board members, to actually delay some of the administrative onboarding and prioritize this particular issue to get us up to speed as quickly as possible, as thoroughly as possible, and to the degree where we not only understand and can evaluate this deal, but we can explain it to the taxpayers as well, whether it's a good deal, in the middle, bad. But we do not want to delay the process that's been sitting out here and the established deadlines of the 8th for a notice to proceed and the plan closing on the 15th. I agree with Superintendent Wise. We are looking for a smooth transition here. We are looking to work with the current board members, and we are looking to do what is our number one priority jointly as a board, which is build trust starting on November 29th to move forward as a district together and to get the trust required to do specifically what we need to do around teacher comp and future construction. So with that, I'll yield the rest of my time back. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. And Jason Cassay?
You know what, everything's already been said.
Okay, very good.
So if you need 3 more minutes, everybody else, that'd be fine.
Okay, very good, thank you. So we'll move on then to online. And our first online person is Brad Geiger, then Bobby Hillard, and then Brandy Bradley. Mr. Geiger, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Geiger, please go ahead.
Thank you for letting me speak this afternoon. As many know, I'm a long-term member of the Long Range Planning Committee. I do not today speak for the committee because we've not had the opportunity to formally address this. I do want to say, however, that the purchase of CU South and the ACC Parker conforms with long identified needs in the district, which have been part of the Master Capital Plan and Long Range Planning Committee for most of the last 4 years. There have been a number of approaches, and the community has been very strong in favor of supporting CTE. While we have laudably invested in current facilities and upgrading those for a more dispersed CTE plan in the last bond, it was always contemplated that a centralized CTE program would be necessary and valuable. We then chose to try to build Pine Lane, which unfortunately has not worked out. The purchase of CU South seems to meet all of the criteria necessary that have been identified literally for years here. I understand the concern about the speed of this approval, and it is unfortunate sometimes things come up at bad timing. But there is no doubt that this is something we've been planning for the better part of the last 5 years. And if the board can resolve some of the concerns about the finances, which is not my area of expertise, then this is exactly what we've been asking the board, and we asked that the voters approved in the last bond fund. Yes, there will have to be further investment in that. That was going to be necessary no matter what building we built, no matter how we proceeded with CTE. And those needs, again, have been identified and noticed in the MCP for the last 5 years. To me, this seems like an excellent deal coming up at an excellent time. One of the problems with Pine Lane has been that the town of Parker has legitimate concerns about traffic, about how we're going to proceed making a number of students coming in and out of there. The CU South building solves all of those problems. We don't have a number of the neighborhood issues that we're going to have in Pine Drive. The bottom line is that the ACC Parker building is an absolute no-brainer. It's what we need. It's where we need it. It meets an identified need. The CU South building, while requiring more due diligence because of the higher cost and the change in plans, meets needs that we've been identifying and that we have to meet. The bottom line is you either approve this with further investigation, or we don't get centralized CTE until we pass another bond. And that would be a tragedy. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Geiger. Bobby Hillard is next, Brandy Bradley, and Suze Carroll. Bobby Hillard, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to make a couple comments. I am a taxpaying citizen of Douglas County, a realtor myself, a certified public accountant, and a parent of children in the school district. Considering a majority of our current board members will be relieved of their positions in approximately 2 weeks, I think it's totally inappropriate to enter into such a significant contract at this time. If you were serious about this not being about this board versus the next board, then you would have included the incoming board members in the discussion, analysis, and presentation. And since I see one of our new board members had to sign up to speak today and was limited to 3 minutes, I see that that was not done. As a realtor, I think it's important to know that the concerns about the seller pulling the property, if we can't make certain deadlines, we need to know if this is a real serious seller or not. And that raises a red flag too for the rest of the purchase transaction. So if they're serious about wanting to make this transaction work, I think everyone here knows that contracts can be amended. So if this seller is serious, we need to go back to them and say, this community involvement and Q&A has to happen, and ask them to amend the contractual deadlines that are creating this transparency problem when we're already having an issue with the transparency, the public's feelings about the board, et cetera. You may have noticed recently that the citizens of Douglas County are no longer comfortable just trusting this board's actions and decisions, and I'm sure that'll continue. Because the board's accountable to the citizens, perhaps a better path forward would be to include an interactive question and answer forum instead of this one-sided presentation without detailed information, followed by public comment that is not answered or addressed. It was nice to hear the slides and see the slides about the discussion about your due diligence. But what would be even better is if you would provide this information in detail and in advance of before rushing to any vote. For example, as a CPA, I would love to be able to review, go through all of the cost savings that you're talking about from the consolidation and the synergies. I would love to be able to go through that analysis and any other analysis that this board went through to come to this conclusion. So in summary, I request this decision be tabled until an interactive community question and answer session can be scheduled. All detailed analysis be provided to the public ASAP and with at least 2 weeks to review it and analyze it before that interactive question and answer forum. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Hillard. Brandy Bradley is next, Suze Carroll, and then Krista Mann.
Brandy Bradley is not online, sir.
Okay. Suze Carroll, is she online?
Yes.
Ms. Carroll?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, directors. My name is Suze Carl, and I have 2 high school students in Douglas County School District. Thank you for taking the time today to listen. Thank you also for your service, commitment, and professionalism. Your countless sacrifices and the time that you've put into this district is extremely appreciated. What an incredible opportunity that Douglas County School District has to purchase the old Wildlife Experience building. Acquiring this building seems to me like complete common sense and, like many have said, a win-win. We need space for our students, teachers, and administration. With the projected population growth for Douglas County, the time to plan for the future is now. So you as a board today have the opportunity to provide the essential, expanded, and accessible educational pathways for every student in our district. The location of the building is important to consider, in my opinion. It's a centralized location for professional learning space for teachers to collaborate. It's extremely accessible location to partner with some major industries. We have RTD on Lincoln, as well as I-25 2 minutes away. I know each of our high schools have CTE available, but we don't exactly have room for growth. Is definitely an increased demand from our students for more concurrent enrollment, as well as career and technical education. Our students must stay competitive and have these opportunities to explore their interests and passions but not just one course at a time. We need intentional, expanded opportunities for each student to gain industry credentials or college credit or both. Both of my kids and their friends take advantage of college courses and have for years, and all of the continued CTE programming. I think it's apparent that concurrent enrollment is an extremely powerful tool for student success. They need more and they want more. So to ensure that our students are ready for the workforce and or to continue their education, I think the time is now and that we have this incredible opportunity to acquire this building. It seems like a common sense and a victory for all of the students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carl. Our final commenter is Krista Mann. Is Krista Mann there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Mann, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So I have a lot of questions today. And after the presentation, I appreciate the information, but I'm sitting here even more confused and find myself frustrated at the lack of transparency on this issue. You know, as I understand it, one of the building's main functions is to house administration, function as a training and conference space for staff with some programming for kids. I think we're all left with the question of, you know, what percentage of the space is allocated to students? How soon is that up and running? And where does that funding come from? Is that funding that is currently available, or do we need to pass another bond for this? You know, I'm wondering how many school facilities still need repairs and improvements and are dealing with, you know, aging equipment. Well, the board wants to invest a huge sum of money into a building that doesn't seem to directly benefit the students and the teachers of this district. And there's other options to house overflow administration staff that don't cost $35 million. How many of these administration positions could work from home? What are the options for additional office space that could be leased? What about the other option that are forced upon our schools when they hit overflow? What about modular trailers in the grass or the parking lot? I think it's not appropriate for this board, who has less than 2 weeks left in their term, to authorize purchasing this building that seems to be a shrine for the administration. I think it's interesting that you guys are acting as though you don't have power in the timing of this contract. You are a buyer with this. If there's no buyer, the seller doesn't have a contract. You absolutely have the power to be able to request an extension on this, to postpone this at the very least, so that the community and new board members can evaluate the fiscal responsibility of entering into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mann. Mr. Blair, I understand we still had one commenter still trying to link on. Is that happening, or?
I do not see Brandy Bradley online, sir.
Okay, all right, very good. All right. Thank you, commenters. We will close public comment at this time. Given this is a special meeting, Superintendent Wise, if there are questions that you heard from public commenters today that you'd like to address, we will give you that opportunity, or the other staff members, and then we will engage into our further discussion regarding the resolution before us.
So between myself and Mrs. Klemesh a little bit, as far as this contract goes, when I'd like you to be able to answer a little bit better, but I think when we looked into it, we were trying at that time to create as much feasibility of timeline, even pushing that into January and February. At that point, we weren't thinking in the detail of being able to get all the due diligence, also construction, moving it over and hitting timelines. We're looking at access between Mr. Lindiger and Mrs. Lindiger and CU. CU has other buyers. They've had other buyers. I think the offer for Mr. Lindiger and then transaction to move us into the authorizer to take property is the piece of wanting to get it done by December. If that does not happen, I don't know that we'll have the same opportunity. So I do worry, and I think Mrs. Klemesh can state further, more than just a worry I have about the ability to continue it. So with that time frame, that's a reality we face with contracts. I'd also like to say, when it comes to cost of the art, the Lindiger family, they will be moving out all of the art, everything at their cost in that process. So we do not have any of that. And turning that over to an educational facility for now in the future, something that they want to partner and ensure that we're successful. When we look at the cost of phases, that phase one has 7 programs. The same 7 programs there will be for a standalone innovation campus and the ability to add more and to fill the building. When you heard Ms. Kataska's analysis of operational cost, ability now and in the future sustainable on top of added in. It also allows us to be more efficient, to look at all of our leases, rentals, and properties that we own. So I think in that, I hope that, hopefully that, I think we had some of that answered in our presentation, but I just want to reiterate any of that. Ms. Kamash, anything on the real estate
I really
contract?
don't have anything to add in addition to what I've said previously with respect to the contract terms that were provided to the district, which was a closing date of December 15th, which we understand was important to the transaction.
One other comment to Mr. Peterson. The ability to build in with the next board is a direct intent, both with onboarding conversations and also the request going forward that we can keep having those conversations to look into engaging with our board of next steps and process side. We want to make sure that we address those concerns, give more facts behind that, but then also assure that we can make decisions in the contract timeline and make sure we're on the same page.
And just to follow up with that, Superintendent Wise, there was I think Mr. Peterson made a request to withhold the notice to proceed until December 7th. Can we answer that question? Is there a kind of a chain reaction that occurs if that were to happen?
No, the contract allows for the notice to proceed to be issued anytime before the closing of the inspection period. The inspection period closes on December the 8th at noon. So as long as the notice to proceed is forwarded to them by that date and time, there is no other provisions in the contract to the contrary that I am aware of.
And staff thoughts about that in terms of not approving the resolution and the assumptions today and waiting until December 7th? Is there any reaction to that?
The only one I would have to ask would be, could we have the process and go back and review and choose to continue? Because I do feel we need to hit things in process with insurance and signing off to have that ability now, and then to also come back with the future board and a potential future meeting to hit those timelines together. But I would like to see that authorization and then also the continuation, if you will. So maybe a friendly amendment to hit that in that process.
And I'm not suggesting that's the action this board will take, but just wondering what the ripple effect would be should that be an option.
I just want to point out that, oh, excuse me.
No, please go ahead.
I'm sorry, with all due respect, President Ray, my apologies for interrupting. I just want to clarify that there is a difference between issuing the notice to proceed and asking this board to pass the resolution today. The resolution authorizes and really asks for the assumption of this district to assume the responsibility as the purchaser in the purchase and sale agreement. If ultimately there is a decision after this date by any Board of Education to say we don't want to proceed, then the letter would not be sent to the seller and the transaction would not proceed. So the obligation is to assume the terms of the purchase and sale agreement. That is what this board is agreeing to at this meeting. It is not necessarily to direct delivery of the notice of the purchase, the notice to proceed. In fact, the resolution authorizes the superintendent to proceed to implement all of the requirements of the purchase and sale agreement. So I wanted to make that clear to this board, and I'm happy to answer any questions in that regard, but the board is leaving it to the discretion of the superintendent under this resolution to proceed with the notice, proceed to issue the notice to proceed to the seller.
Very good. That clarifies a great deal. Thank you, Ms. Klimisch. Other questions, Director Long?
Well, while we are on the timeline, so we have one of the agenda items, number 7, to change the day of the board meeting. I just wonder, logistically speaking, if we change the November 29 board meeting to a general board meeting instead of special board meeting, and brought this up as a potential items for discussions, would that affecting the timeline? I truly feel that election has consequence, and we do have 4 new board members that are coming in that deserve the deliberations on these topics for themselves.
Ms. Clemish, did you want to respond to that?
I just wanted to say that that board meeting has been set as a special meeting for the purpose of our board members taking their oath of office and then organizing their board, the new board organizing themselves as an operational board. After that has occurred, then that board can proceed to set meetings and proceed to operate as a board of education. I think there may be some organizational difficulties with respect to proceeding to engage in business at that same meeting.
Yeah.
So
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Clemish. Director Holtzman and Director Chancho-Shore.
So I totally agree with you, Director Long, that elections do have consequences. However, this timeline, it's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is really being driven by the seller. Which leaves us, as one board member, I would much rather allow more time, allow the new board to be seated, but that is not a part of what we can control. What we can control is that this is an opportunity that I myself have asked many questions about many times. Again, the confidentiality agreement was something driven by the seller. As soon as we were allowed, we involved community as quickly and as much as we could. But what I'm confident of is that I have had an opportunity to ask the questions that need to be asked. And I'm also confident of our team. I know that they have done due diligence above and beyond. And so as much as I agree with you, and I do believe elections have consequences, this timeline is out of our control unless we decide, as one of our long-standing community members mentioned, to allow this opportunity to go away, which in his opinion and mine would be a tragedy.
Thank you, Director Holtzman. Director Chancho-Shore.
Did the LRPC, the MBOC, or the Fiscal Oversight Committees review this particular situation and circumstance, and what was their recommendation?
Superintendent Wise and staff provided a presentation to members of those 3 committees. They weren't convened in an official committee to be able to provide a specific recommendation, but we did receive several emails from committee members indicating their thoughts and reactions to that proposal.
And there would be, from my understanding, there's a timeline that I think I heard the date to be December 15th that continues to wander through. And the seated board, November 29th, can call a special meeting at any time between November 29th and December 15th to make a decision that does not impact this timeline or that does impact this timeline.
Ms. Clemish, did you want to respond?
Thank you, Director Ray. And in response to Director Chancho-Shore's question, I think the critical period of time here is the time period related to our newly constituted board, is the time period from November 29th through what would be December 7th or December 8th at noon, because it's during that period of time within which the district needs to tender a notice to proceed to the seller. Additionally, and December 15th, in response to that date, that's the closing date. That's when we would proceed to finalize the agreement at closing, and the actual transfer of ownership of the property would occur December 15th at noon. Another point I want to make is that during this period of time, if this board does assume responsibilities as the purchaser under the PSA, there is also provisions in there that we must come to agreement with the University of Colorado with respect to the nursing occupancy agreement and the nursing educational agreement. The PSA provides that if we don't come to terms with respect to that, that CU can withdraw its interest in this agreement. So we're not the only drivers to proceed with this agreement. There's things that need to happen between the remainder from this date forward to the closing of the investigation or the diligence period, separate and apart from reviewing the property for due diligence with respect to issues that may relate to the physical aspects of the property itself.
Very good. So it seems to me that we've resolved to some degree this transition issue of current board, new board, that there's still an opportunity for newly seated board to also have an influence in how we proceed. And so I feel like that's been resolved. So if,
President Wright,
I'm sorry, Director Meek, go ahead.
do you mind if I interject real quickly?
Sure, please.
I did have a question. Superintendent-wise, is there anything that's preventing the newly elected school board members from receiving all of the information and briefing information that they need? Is there anything that's preventing them from getting up to speed at this point in time?
Let me interject first, Director Meek. So until an oath of office is taken, board directors don't necessarily have access to privileged information. I think there's anything that's public, that's provided and presented in public, certainly, absolutely, they should have access to that. But until that oath of office is taken, that's the signal. They also sign a disclosure form in terms of confidentiality, if we move into executive sessions, et cetera. So that would be my quick response. I don't know, Superintendent Wise?
Yeah, current state, we look at next official board meeting is December 14th. I do believe from the 29th moving forward, we have the opportunity to create time devoted to this, prioritized time. We're going to say, is there anything that could get in the way? Time. Therefore, we have to make a commitment, work through it together. When you look at hitting our timelines, we just need to be cognizant even better of within this time frame, when's the best time in which to meet? And there are committee meetings and everything else, we're gonna work together to look at those opportunities, create those opportunities, and maximize those opportunities.
All right, other questions? Director Hansen, was your hand up?
It was. I just want to make sure that I understand very clearly the dates moving forward. If we pass this assignment, or we pass this resolution to approve the assignment and authorize the acquisition, it basically just begins a period between now and closing, and the new board will have an opportunity to weigh in, be entirely briefed, be up to speed before that closing is voted on in the December 14th meeting, correct?
The only thing I would insert is there's not a vote for closing.
If the new board would have a problem with anything, there's an exit option if they would decide that this is not something that they want to move forward with. But we still are giving you the opportunity today to continue the process, assuming that they will see the opportunity that we all see.
That is correct with with a couple of caveats. One, the critical date, in my view, is December 8th at noon, the closing of the inspection period. It is by that date and time that the quarry would be given the authorization to issue a notice to proceed. I would agree with everything you expressed, except that Corey will be given the authority to issue the notice to proceed at any time if this resolution is passed today. So to the extent that he withholds sending the notice to proceed until after the reorganization of the new board, I would agree with your statements.
Okay. Corey, did you want to say? Okay, I would like to move that we move forward with the resolution to approve assignment and authorize acquisition of real property.
Point of order, this is not the agenda item yet.
We are on agenda item 5, Director Long, which is, I'm sorry, You are correct, Director Long. We are not on agenda
My
item 8.
apologies, I will wait.
I apologize as well. All right, any other questions? So we are somewhat doing agenda item 8 right now. And so board, I would just ask for your permission, since we skipped to agenda 8, to go ahead and wrap up our discussion or our questions on agenda 8. Director Lung?
Well, President Ray, without modifying the approved agenda, we cannot just jump to 5 to 8 without going 6 and 7.
We've approved the agenda already.
Right, so that means that the next item is 6, not 8.
So the two items we haven't approved, and let's go ahead and do that, because I see some discomfort among directors. So let's go ahead and just step back to number 6, which is the approval of the unofficial minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Graziano, seconded by Holtzman. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Chancho Shore?
Aye.
Graziano?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Holtzman?
Aye.
Lung?
Aye.
Meek?
Aye.
Ray, aye. Passes unanimously. Next agenda item is to change the date to November 29th for the oath of office and for that particular special board meeting. Reason being is that there's some legislative language around number of days that can expire before the election, from when the election results are certified, which is on November 17th, to when the oath of office needs to be taken. So that is just honoring that to make sure that we stay within that window. Is there a motion to approve?
President Ray,
I'm sorry?
I'm just wondering, is that the earliest date from the date of certification that works for the newly elected board members?
Well, the week before is Thanksgiving, so I think that's why that date was set. So is there a motion
That's
to move
the only
that?
date that meets the guidelines that are required by the law.
Correct. And did you make that motion, Director Meek? I'm sorry.
I was really wanting to make sure I understood that. So, sure, I move to approve the change in date for the special meeting to be November 29th.
Okay, Director Meek.
Second.
Seconded by Graziano. Any further discussion? Director Lung?
I would like to make an amendment to that. I look back in 4 years ago, the first board meeting when we sworn in, that was in November 28, 2017. After we sworn in, we actually have a long list of agenda items that we are voting on. I believe that meeting ended at 11 p.m. My first meeting, drink from the fire hose. So I believe it will give them flexibility if they want to do the same thing on the November 29 meeting to discuss this. So instead of having it as a special meeting, I would like to change it to a general meeting. So during the agenda pending item for November 29 meeting, I know that we are still technically in charge, but if they give the input that, if the new board member give the input that they want to discuss more things, including a lot limited to this CU South purchase, they have their options. So I would love to see whether we can change it to a general meeting instead of special meeting.
So Director Lung, so a special meeting allows the same authority to take action and make decisions. So certainly that 29th meeting, that board that now is seated could certainly make a motion to amend their agenda to include other items that are not on the agenda. So there's still that flexibility. It doesn't matter whether it's classified as special or regular meeting. Whenever this board is in a quorum, they certainly have the authority to make decisions. The issue at hand really is, as we've heard tonight, or today, this afternoon, is certainly the transparency piece in terms of making sure our public knows. And so, so I would say that I think it's appropriate to maintain the current special meeting declaration. I think the new board would certainly have the ability to amend their agenda should they desire, if they want additional action items. So I don't think that's an issue. I respect though what you're saying is wanting to give them as much flexibility as possible to take action. And I don't think that's prohibited in our current declaration of that special meeting. Any other discussion or questions?
President Ray, I think that really was where I was headed with my thinking before. If there is background work that the new board members can be doing to get up to speed so that on that November 29th meeting, there's an opportunity for the new board members to come in as prepared as possible, and then perhaps getting any additional information
that night as well in order to move forward. I'm just trying to think of a timeline that's going to allow us to move forward in a way where it's win-win-win for everyone and we're able to meet and hit all the deadlines that we are looking at trying to hit here.
Yeah, totally agree. And again, I think, as we said earlier, I don't think there's any information that we've presented in public that can't, I don't think there's any really even privileged information that the new board would need to be able to have that kind of discussion whenever after they are sworn into office. So I don't know. I don't know what that would be, how that would look different, to be honest with you. And I know that our board directors definitely, we want them to have as much information as possible. So I think everything that we've presented tonight, or today, this afternoon, excuse me, and everything prior to that will certainly be fed to our new elected board directors for consideration. I believe there was a motion made by Director Meek. Was there a second for changing the date?
Second.
Seconded by Graziano. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. Chancho Shore.
Aye.
Graziano.
I'm just going to say one thing. This is my last vote. And this is in my industry, we refer to this as a bluebird. And seeing all the great work that's been done by the DCSD staff under difficult parameters to get us to this point. There were many comments made that there's been all this hiding and lack of transparency. That is absolutely not the case. The staff operated within difficult parameters to get us to this point where we can continue this discussion. And so I want to thank them for their work. And I also really want to say, given that this could be truly a bluebird, I hope the newly formed board can hit the ground running and pull this together with the district to achieve a success right out of the gate. And so with that, I resoundingly vote aye.
And Director Graziano, I don't know if you realize this could be your next to last vote, because this is simply on the change of board dates. But we will let you reiterate that passion plea for the next.
I'll repeat that.
All right. So let's vote. I think we had Graziano voted yay for the change of date. Hanson?
I very passionately vote yes to move that meeting.
And Holtzman?
Aye.
Lung?
Well, I want to make sure that, because in this agenda item, in the summary, is only specified saying that the new board member must take oath, and therefore this meeting is for the taking the oath of office and the reorganization of the new board. But with your clarifications, if the agenda planning, during the agenda meeting so chosen, they can put in any other items that they wanted to in the November 29 meeting. With that understanding, I will yes.
All right, very good. And Mr. Peterson, since you're in the audience, I mean, if there's things you would like us to modify that 29th, just let me know. We'll make that happen. All right, so that was a yes from Director Lung, I'm sorry, and Director Meek.
Aye.
And Director Ray is an aye, so that passes unanimously. All right. Now, we're moving on then to the approval of assignment and authorization of acquisition of real property and resolution related to that. Are there any further questions before we entertain a motion? Seeing none, Director Graziano, I believe you should direct your motion. And then we can have discussion afterwards.
I had just already made the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So, I just made it out of order. So I would renew my motion.
So I assume, and so Director Hanson is making the motion to approve the assignment and assumption of the purchase of a sale agreement as well as the resolution. Director Graziano, I believe, is a fair second. All right. Any further discussion? Director Lung?
I would like to amend the motions to table it until the next board meeting, the next special board meeting on November 29.
So Director Hanson, there is a friendly amendment of wanting to, and actually I'm going to say, because it's not really a friendly amendment, it really is a substantially different motion. So Director Long, if you'd make your motion.
I'm making a secondary motions to table this to the November 29 the special board meeting.
Okay, motion's been made to postpone this till the November 29th special board meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
I'm sorry? Director Meek, was that?
Second. Second.
Okay, Director Meeks seconded, okay. Further discussion, Director Chancha-Shore.
Just for clarification, it's my understanding that if the first resolution is passed on November 29th, there can be whatever happens on November 29th happens on November 29th and can change this resolution. But this resolution helps move things forward, but things can be changed. Is that my understanding?
The resolution itself would not be changed unless there was a motion to actually modify the resolution. As Ms. Clemish pointed out, this resolution is simply saying that we are assuming the responsibilities of the purchaser. That's really the sole intent of this as in terms of moving forward. As also has been presented is there's another opportunity in terms of a notice to move forward that would be placed on December 7th. So this action we're making is simply to assume the responsibility of the purchaser. Other discussion. So we've had a motion and a second to postpone till the 29th. Director Hansen?
It is one thing to put a stop on work that is being done. It is entirely different ask of our staff to put off beginning work for another 2 weeks and then ask them to scramble. It is completely disrespectful to our staff when our new board that will be seated will have a very substantial opportunity to weigh in and be a part of this decision-making process. It is not necessary to kick the can down the road and put our staff in a time crunch.
Okay, any other further discussion? Director Lung?
Well, I think if we table it to the 29th, does not mean that the staff cannot continue to engage the things that do not require board resolutions. I heard loud and clear from the incoming board member, this is their wish. And I think really, I personally would love to, think that we should honor, their wish. And if indeed there is a meeting on the 29th, that probably still give us substantial time. At that time, they vote to move forward the current resolutions as it is. And I would love to, I just want to make sure that I support all the staff that doing it so far. And you guys are awesome, wonderful, you're just caught in the middle. However, as I said before, election has consequence. And I want to make sure that when the new board come in, the first thing that they come in is not arguing about what we did in the last board meeting, or need to make any resolutions to, I want all 7 of you, starting from November 29, to have a good start, and from the square that you all coming in and do the stuff together as one team. Right. Versus seems to me that now I heard loud and clear that the incoming majority is want to do something differently, and I just think that for the harmony and respect, that may be the good actions to take.
Thank you, Director Lung. So any other need for discussion before we take a vote? And this is on the secondary motion regarding postponing this meeting to November 29th. Director Meek?
Sure. I just wanted to reiterate, I fully support this project and am very thankful for all the work that the staff have done, understanding the very difficult timeline, confidentiality agreements that we didn't sign, we were part of. So I just want to reiterate that I fully believe in this project. I do not see tabling it till the 29th as asking the district to slow down in the least with everything that they can be doing to be building this up. We have partners with CU and the Linegers, and partners means that you understand each other and you understand your challenges. And our goal is to make sure that we're making decisions that are bringing everyone along, so we're making the district as strong as possible. And I fully believe this project is going to do that. We just need to make sure we do it in the right manner. And that was my reason for supporting the tabling till the 29th.
Very good. So I'm going to ask us to vote, directors, on the motion to table till the 29th. Director Chancha-Shore?
No.
Director Graziano?
No.
Director Hansen?
No?
Director Holtzman?
No.
Director Lung?
Aye.
Director Meek?
Aye.
And Director Ray is a no as well. So that motion does not pass, so therefore we revert back to the original motion, which is to accept this resolution approving the assignment and authorization and acquisition of real property. Is there a motion? Who made the motion on that? Director Hansen and
Third time.
Director Graziano seconded. Yeah, the memory is failing. All right, so motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? I will just say too, just very quickly, that this resolution, I think, also outlines some of the rationale for why we're doing what we're about to do. And I just think there's some words in here, there's some phrases, everything from that this aligns with our end statements that we've worked years on in terms of looking at post-secondary as well as pathways for kids. It supports our strategic plan. It really responds to the need of students who are asking for more opportunities and more pathways. So I do want to just highlight this resolution because I think it really does a nice job at really denoting the history behind this place that we've gotten to today. So with that, I will ask for a vote. Chancho Shore?
With humility and as much understanding as I can have, yes.
All right. Director Graziano?
Aye.
Director Hansen?
Aye.
Director Holtzman?
Well, since this is my last vote, I do want to say a couple of things. You know, there was some discussion brought up today about what we wanted our legacy to be. And so I just wanted to be clear that I want my legacy to be one of doing what I felt was in the best interest of our students every single time I voted. And I am making this vote as a yes because I believe that's the case today. And part of the way I've made my decisions is by relying on experts and understanding and having humility that I don't always have all the answers. I am not, for instance, a security expert who can give the best information about who should or should not carry firearms in schools. I am not a public health expert who can give the best advice about mitigating the risk of infectious disease. I am a preschool teacher, but not an educator like all of you in the room who have told us tonight about things that concern me, like the intentional focus that I wanted to make sure we were doing programming that was PK through 12. And I've been assured that that's correct. You've assured us of some other things about the importance of supporting our staff, our teachers, all of our leaders, whether you be in this room tonight or in our buildings, need a place to come together and learn, and need a place to be able to work together most efficiently. And while I understand that's not the primary purpose of this, that is a purpose that benefits our students. I rely on engineers to tell me when buildings are sound or not, and to tell me how to repair them, and to make sure that they're safe environments and that they're accessible for all. And I heard today all of those things, that this is an ADA acceptable building, and that we have planned. I've heard from finance, another expert that I rely on, who has weighed that we spend $1 million a year in leases, that maintenance costs we will have no matter what, and that these things have all been carefully looked at. And so with all of that, and with the benefit of a trust in our superintendent and cabinet, which I would say is not a blind trust. If you know me, you will know that I don't do that at all easily. I really don't like the phrase to rely on positive intent, because I don't think that's my job as a board director. I think my job is to actually verify and make reasonable judgments. And so when I say I trust this team, it's not said easily, but I do. And so that is a benefit to also having been able to rely on the information that you have gotten us so quickly. Like I said, I've asked a lot of questions. I've seen that you've answered mine and all of the other people's questions. So with that, I will quit talking, and I will say that I'm happy to vote yes.
Thank you, Director Holtzman. Director Lung.
Well, I have high respect for our district staff and teachers and the people that are involved in doing these projects. And so it is a very difficult vote, for me. on one hand, I know your decisions is based on your sound judgment and your research. On the other hand, I do want to acknowledge there's a lot of doubts out there on this project. And so my votes do not reflect, I do not trust you or whatever that you do not measure up. It just want to reflect the reality that to proceed with this project has a lot of outstanding issues, especially whether a bond is needed to make sure that this project has a really great success. And also the optics that it is not as transparent as it should be. And also with the new incoming board member say loud and clear that they want it to be tabled, I feel a 7-0 do not reflect the true sentiment on moving this forward. Therefore, I will no.
All right, and Director Meek.
Again, my desire was really to change the timeline for how this would move forward, since that avenue is now closed and lost in the prior vote. I will vote yes on moving forward using this avenue because it is the option that is now available before us.
Very good, thank you, Director Meek. And Director Ray is an aye as well, so that motion passes 6-1. Again, staff and commenters, thank you, and looking forward to continuing our due diligence as we continue the timeline on this. Next, directors, is director reports, and I have nothing for president report at this time. Vice President Holtzman, none. Any other director reports need to be made? All right. We do, directors, have some issues that we need to discuss in executive session, which is a closed session, for purposes of receiving legal advice allowed by CRS 246402-4B related to legal questions regarding pending litigation, including DCSD et al. Versus Douglas County Health Department. During the executive session, the board is not allowed to adopt any proposed policy, resolution, regulation, or take any formal action. We do have a quorum of board members here. A 2/3 vote is required to move us into executive session. I would ask for a motion at this time to move and adjourn our special meeting and move into executive session. Is there a motion?
I move that we adjourn and move into executive session.
Second?
Motion made and seconded by Lung. In our executive session will include Superintendent Wise, General Counsel Mary Kay Clemish, as well as remote consultation from Kaplan and Ernest with Elliot Hood and Jack Peters. Any further discussion before we vote? All right, seeing none. Chancho Shore? Aye. Graziano?
Aye.
Hanson?
Aye.
Holtzman?
Aye.
Lung?
Aye.
Meek?
Aye.
Ray, aye. That passes unanimously. We are adjourned and we'll meet in executive session.